Welcome back to the Morning Brief on Channels Television. And so for good reason, we turn our attention to the health sector. You know what they say, health is wealth. And it goes without saying that a nation is as healthy as its health sector. So what's the impact of the Japa syndrome on different aspects of Nigeria's health sector, be it for the doctors, nurses, medical, laboratory scientists. So this morning we have for you a complete panel, and we're going to be, peeping into the world of our medical practitioners. To help us with this conversation, we have joining us this morning Dr. Folashade Ali. She's a consultant cardiologist and Chief Medical Director, Lagos Executive Cardiovascular Center. She joins us via Zoom. We also have Abdullahi Dele. He's the president, Nigeria Association of Resident Doctors and Senior Registrar, Department of Family Medicine, University of Ilorin Teaching Hospital, who joins us from our Abuja studio. We also have Comrade Toba Odumosu, who will be joining us later on. We also have joining us here in our Lagos studio, Mr. Augustine Anthony, who is a medical laboratory scientist, and he's the National Vice President, Young Medical Laboratory Scientist Forum, who joins us here in our Lagos studio. All right, so it's a complete panel. So I'm going to start with ladies first, naturally. So I'm going to start with you, Dr. Ali. In 2023 alone, there were reports that about 9,000 medical doctors exited the country. And we have also the medical laboratory field feeling the impact of the brain drain as well, with about 10,000 leaving the country in the last 5 years or so. The nurses too are not left out. The nursing field has also experienced a brain drain. About 7,500 nurses exiting Nigeria in search of greener pastures. So the image is quite telling. What I want you to do for us is to share with us what the typical day is like for medical practitioners, when you leave for the office and when you return. And I'm asking this question for good reason. I dread, falling down with malaria because I use a health center, and by the time I get to a health center, if I have to go in the first place, I pick a number, and my number is, the list is number 10 in a typical day. So what's it like for medical practitioners? And it's going to go around. So, Dr. Ali.
Thank you very much, the moderator, Ms. Moderator. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. That's a very nice question you have asked at this, point in time. The Japa syndrome has really affected the industry. A typical morning is, getting to work in the office as early as sometimes 8:30. And you come, you find out, the first thing that someone is possibly not being able to come, and you find out, okay, maybe she's unwell, and the next thing is that, or you just receive a post to say she's not coming, she's maybe already relocated and something. So this comes up practically almost every day, disrupting services, and we just quickly have to make sure all the department that just suddenly lost a staff to Japa or someone, you just quickly need to find a way of making sure everywhere is covered. So it's what we see practically almost on a weekly, monthly, basis, whereby you just come to work, and you're looking for one staff or the other to continue the work with. But oftentimes we're able to make sure everything works very well. Calling up maybe some local to come and quickly help out with the day's work. So it's quite disturbing, but we make sure it doesn't disrupt our services at every point in time. And so we, in the light of this, we have agencies whereby we can easily call, to help us, with a locum staffs that can easily come in. So the Japa syndrome is really very, very active. It's facing us on a day-to-day basis, but somehow we become used to it, like Nigerians. But we get used to things easily, and we make sure the services is not disrupted, and we ensure our patients are seen and they are satisfied. So, but oftentimes it creates the numbers in terms of many patients will be seen by a single doctor, especially when it comes to public service. So that's where it's even affecting more than the private sectors, because even recently, the residents, having that's people who goes into specialization, you find that you don't have more of them coming up into residency programs, so it's really affecting every sector. But the way it is, Nigerians, all of us, including we in the healthcare sectors, we make sure that we will stand up to the challenge, or to the challenges of the Japa syndrome. We that are remaining, we make sure we stand up and make sure that patients are seen and the services is not unduly disrupted. But it can be quite challenging.
Yeah.
I can assure you that.
We'll explore the impact into the specialist field later on. But very quickly, you mentioned the need to bring in locum staff to come and assist. Just for the Nigerians, the layman who may not understand what the word locum means, maybe you should just quickly explain before we go to our other panelists.
Okay, locum services or locum staff are those who are always on the standby. They are there, so you can call on them to quickly come up and assist with the services. So and then they will come in and do what they are supposed to do.
Okay, so they're auxiliary staff. All right, so let's come to the studio now. Our comrade Toba Odumosu has since joined us, who is the Secretary, Nigeria Association of Nigerian Nurses and Midwives, Lagos chapter. And he joins us here in our Lagos studio. Thank you so much for joining us. So naturally, I'll come to you next. What's the typical day like for you? And then it will go to Mr. Anthony.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me. So I think for nurses, usually most of the nurses run a shift system. So you come in and do an handover. You look at your patient. You want to see what needs to be done. You have medication rounds to do. You have wound dressing or whatever you need to do. And then you go through that routine. You want to see if they've eaten. And of course, it also depends on what kind of ward you're working on. So that's typically determines what you'll be doing during the day. And then you do that, basically some of them are repetitive. You have to do different medication rounds and things like that. And there's a need for you to do counseling, whatever you do all that. Different engagement with the patient relative and all that. And then you hand over to the next person to, for us,
let me put it
it's
in
a 24-hour
context.
thing. You have to.
Let me put it in context. What's the impact of the exit of, mass exit of nurses from Nigeria on those who are remaining, and what's the impact on the typical day of a Nigerian nurse?
Oh, well, things have changed drastically. You can imagine. I mean, a ward that maybe ordinarily should be covered by 2, 3, 4 nurses or even 5, then you have 2 people running that kind of shift. It's completely changed the work dynamic because it impacts severely on the quality of work they're able to do. You then have to probably stay around the bare bones because you can't afford to, you don't have a luxury of time to. And of course, it has also drastically increased the margin of error. I mean, it's just like a production process. You are supposed to produce at a particular level of capacity, and then you overstretch that capacity. Even if it's machines, they begin to break down, they begin to. So for nurses too, people are now having work-related illnesses, back pain, all sorts, because fewer people have to do that work. And then for people who have ordinarily, when you're manning the ward, you have different levels of expertise and years of experience. So there's way the workload is also distributed. But now, when you have a fewer number of hands, the one person has to take care of several responsibilities. So it becomes even more difficult for you to, distribute tasks and all that. And of course, the burnout that comes from that means that you can, what we are seeing, in fact, we are already now considering some sort of indemnity policies because once you don't have safe staffing levels, when you now commit medical error or any error, it's your own license that is at stake. Nobody's going to look at what kind of work condition and work environment are you, providing that service. That's probably led to that error. And clearly, we have even started seeing some of those kind of cases. Medication error, all sort of things that will come naturally when you're putting a system under immense stress. So I think those are some of the things that we're seeing nowadays.
Quite revealing. Mr. Anthony.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for having me. For us in the medical laboratory sector, there is one issue we have. Presently, when patients come to the facility, routinely they go through the nurse to the doctor, then they come back to the lab to do a test. And a lot of time, these patients already worn out, tired, and they'll be like, please, I need my results urgently and urgently. And because of the fact that medical diagnostic testing is increasing, there's need to do more. Precision medicine is taking over the day. More tests need to be done. We have this issue presently because of the aspect of Japa, that the best hands are leaving. Now, young lab scientists and lab scientists migrate of this country for two reasons. One, those who have the passion to practice, they're not having the necessary equipment and machines they need to do their work. That is those migrating on the grounds of passion. Now, also those who are looking at better remuneration and poor payment services across where they work, they see the need to migrate in that regard. Now, so if you look at these two sets of people, that takes away the best brains, so to say. Those who have the practice in mind, because it's not every scientist that wants to work in the lab. Some want to be in the research center, some want to involve in other things. But those who have the interest of the patient at heart. Now remember that the healthcare sector itself is not a lucrative industry, so to say. It's a thing of passion. Because a typical work day for a lab scientist, you come to work by 8 o'clock, you're expected to be in the work till 4. Now that is when you have enough hands. What happens when a job that's supposed to be done by 5 persons, you guys are just 2? A lot of places don't have phlebotomists, which are those who bleed patients to take blood. You still have to run out from the lab to do that. And when you finish with that, you need to still go back to the lab, standardize your reagents, you need to do quality control, you need to do your tests, ensuring that the result which the doctor is going to act on to give prescription is clear. So now imagine when somebody, example, is not having hepatitis, and I screen and I say this person is hepatitis B positive. Somebody is not having HIV because of stress of job, and I screen and I say this person is HIV positive. The doctor is going to add on that result and start giving antiretroviral therapy. Now look at the impact. Now, what are the things that causes it? A lot of time, pressure. Handling multiple priorities at the same time, fine, we are trained to do a lot at the same time, but not to get into breaking limit. You are supposed to come to work by 8 and definitely have a lunch break around 12:1 and close by 4. But a lot of time you see people working from that time to even 8 p.m. in the night. That's like 12 hours. And you still have to come back tomorrow to continue the same process. And even that person who is there, fine, is getting all the experiences, being able to work under pressure, improves his CV and runs away and leaves the country. And you now need to still bring another hand who is going to repeat the same circle. So it's more like a vicious circle, and we keep losing the best hand. Fine and good, a lot of persons, there are those who have interacted with in my years of practice who have the mindset to stay. But the working conditions is something that have not so been motivational, so to speak, for them to see the need to give back to the fatherland. The challenges a lot of time are plenty, but then we have people who have the interest of the patient at heart. But one challenge they do have is the fact that the working conditions are not cool, and there are not necessary infrastructure to carry out the processes that they needed to do. So that increases stress on a general level. And one present killer disease, which is not a routine disease, is stress. Presently, even in this Lagos, a lot of persons are stressed. You have to wake up at 3 a.m.
Indeed, quite a lot to chew on.
Yeah,
there.
so you get...
Let's take it now to our guest in our Abuja studio, Mr. Ali. I know that you have quite a lot to say about what you've heard so far, so go ahead.
Oh, thank you very, very much. I want to start by thanking you for having me this morning, and thank you for the good job you're doing. To take it from the last speaker, it's quite sad, and I concur. It's a vicious cycle. My association has actually been pointing out to this vicious cycle for a very long time by now. for the last 5 years, we've actually been pointing to this eventual situation, because we need to look at Japa as not just a one-time event, but a sequence of events. And like I said, it's a vicious cycle, making it that once some leave, you have a lot more push factors that will make others to leave. We have for a long time concentrated on the pull factors. Yes, the better life over dead remuneration, that we are neglecting the push factors. What is making the healthcare workers leave Nigeria? You asked that what is the routine day like for the healthcare worker? Well, the routine day is always very, very, very difficult. What do I mean? If you look at the last statistics the NMA gave about doctor to patient ratio, you will see that we have about 1 doctor to 5,000 patients on an average. That means in a day, you are expecting that one doctor will see 40, 45 patients for a routine activity, from the emergency to the clinics and then for other procedures. Now, you need to understand also that when you have this cycle, it actually affects both the patient and the healthcare worker. What do I mean? The healthcare worker comes in, there's a crowd to see, he's trying to prioritize, he's trying to triage his patients as much as possible so that he sees the ones that are most needed to be seen as fast as possible. Number one, this idea of triaging is being misunderstood by the common patients that sees them calling in a patient that came after them. Results in anger, it results in violence within that clinic. Now, the patient being angry will vent the anger on the doctors, will vent the anger on the nurses. You ask the patient for a lab result or a lab test, the patient goes with that anger to the lab, and the lab scientist that has already been overworked, as maybe a place where you have 5 people meant to work, you have like maybe 1 or 2 trying to prioritize things. The angry patient comes in, and then there's another a round of verbal assault and all that. And that is the typical day in our healthcare sector. Now, what does this actually cause to the healthcare worker? Number one, there's the physical burnout. There's the mental stress. There's the psychological stress. You are coming to work every day, and you are already expecting that there's one person or one individual that is going to shout on you, either the patient relative or even your superiors at work, because of the stress of work. When the stress of work gets in, there's no way everybody will want to vent in anger. So what are we looking at as the protocol to the job description of each healthcare worker? What is our plan for working hours? Like the cardiologist actually pointed out, there are locum officers. But who are these locum officers? Locum officers are actually people that are not primarily employed in that facility. They are employed somewhere else, but they are called in to come and block up or clear up a gap in the healthcare services of that facility. So if an individual that has gone somewhere else to work before is being called up by another facility to come and please help us cover. And healthcare is a very sensitive region. You as a healthcare worker, even when stressed, might actually just look at it that if we don't go here to help out here, there will be a lacuna, and a lot of other patients will have a lot of other comorbidities or mortalities to come with it. So that way, a stressed healthcare worker lives from one point of duty to the other. And all this is the vicious cycle we are currently seeing. Now, when that cycle comes in, on doing all of this, healthcare is not lucrative. It's actually a misnomer. It gives you an average form of life, basically, average form of life. And as based on this current economy, it is even going far below average right now, far, far below average. So you are having to spend the better part of your life tending to other people. You do not have time for family, you don't have time for self, and you are not well remunerated for all of these activities. The worst part is that you don't have a toxic environment where you are working both at work, and then there's a toxic environment at home because you are carrying up whatever stress from work home and whatever stress from home back to work. All of these are the things that we need to put into place. So I think in as much as we are trying to look at how we will increase the number, we have to also think about what the working environment within our health facility is. How are we planning to support the healthcare worker to stay within the healthcare sector? You need to see things from a broader perspective. Like one of the speakers once pointed out, it's all about even career progression. What is it that the person wants to do? How many subspecialties are being supported by the Nigerian healthcare facilities? How many of them are allowed to express themselves formally? If they are not allowing them to express themselves and they have an opportunity, why are we saying that they are not being patriotic to leave and actually go and express themselves the way they want to express themselves? All of things are things we need to put into perspective when we are looking at the Japa syndrome as it's being connoted to be, and how we can solve it as much as possible.
Let me take it from what you just said, Mr. Abdullahi Dele. You said that the healthcare sector is not lucrative. So let me come back to the studio to Comrade Odumosu. As a Secretary, National Association of Nigerian Nurses and Midwives in Lagos, when you say that the healthcare sector is not lucrative, most times we see those who japa, in that word, go out there and they end up studying nursing or maybe fine-tune what they had already studied here in Nigeria, and many of them turn out to be nurses or healthcare workers in that space. Would you really blame them for leaving this country to go abroad for greener pasture? Would you sincerely blame them? And if you do or don't, why?
Thank you very much for that question. I think it's a perfect, it makes perfect economic sense to leave the country to go and practice abroad, because clearly, I mean, anywhere, labor will always move in the direction of capital. And where your services are better paid for, people will always move in that direction. I mean, we operate, globally, a free market system. So I wouldn't blame anybody for leaving. In fact, when people see young nurses here, even patients ask you why you're here, people you are taking care of. Because, you can easily do the maths. When you know what you earn here, you know what the possibility is there and all the opportunities are available and the kind of practice environment you're going to find yourself. And you can understand how much more lucrative it is when people who have essentially finished maybe bachelor's or they already have working experience and then they travel abroad to go study, even from the low entry ones that maybe licensed practical nursing is lucrative enough for people to go into that, let alone when you now have to come in at RN or a bachelor's level. So, it's easy for anybody to come to that decision. But of course, I know there's a huge global shortage of nurses. We're talking about, at least WHO last statistics is saying about 5.1 million nurses by 2030. So that's a huge article. And when you look at the push and pull factors, in some of these places, you have sign-up bonuses, they are willing to pay for your relocation, they're willing to, so there's so much in the package that it's very easy for anybody to come to that decision to leave the country. Those are the pull factors. Just like he was mentioning, you look at the push factors, the work environment, the stress, even the pay package. You have serious anxiety about your future. That if I continue to do this for, where will you exactly get me in the next 10 years? How do I plan ahead? And when you know that there's an option where you can go work somewhere and then you wouldn't have all those worries would almost magically disappear. Nobody would. So for people who are here, they deserve so much commendation. Those who genuinely want to say, because there are also so many of our members who are just waiting to before it used to be that people would work 5-6 years, then they will start their exit plans. Now, the younger, whatever, they actually write their IELTS maybe in their final year, in their NY. It's like they're just preparing. They don't even want to have a day of work experience within the system, because, during your clinical posting, you've seen what the system looks like.
Right.
It's not something you want to...
Quite a picture you've painted, and this is reality, and that's why we're having this conversation to, again, remind those who are in position of authority, just in case they've forgotten, that we have literally a disaster on our hands, that we need to act as fast as yesterday. So let me take this to Dr. Ali, because you talked about the push and the pull factors, but she is staying. So, Dr. Ali, I'll come to you now. So he has talked about the push, the pull factor, but obviously there is a keep factor as well, which is keeping you or has kept you now. So what would be those keep factors in spite of the push and pull factors? I hope you catch my drift here.
Yes, I pretty catch what you're asking about. To me as a doctor, I know one thing about me is that I have passion for the job. And the passion is that, look, I just need to help my people here. And that is the first thing, because here we need the services even more than ever before. And if you think jettisoning to for greener pastures and going away, That shouldn't be the case if you trained here. If you are a trained doctor or nurse here, you know that they need us more here. They need our expertise more here. But over there, it's already saturated. It is already saturated. We need ourselves here more. So we need to help our people. And one thing that always is a driving factor is that if all of us decide to leave, and then who is going to help? Who is going to do the work here? Who is going to save our own people? And when you stay in a place like this, you can reach the top of your career because you are needed, you'll be seen, you'll be doing what you are expected to do, and you are doing it well, and people will see you, and then you will rise up even faster in your career. So I don't think, I know it's never easy, we're in a developing country or a developing, nation. So it's never easy. So, but services over what we call monetary gain, is what has been the driving factor here. And then, of course, we need us more here.
Right.
Going abroad, I know you can go abroad for training. You can always, and now with the invent of the internet, the virtual, you can attend meetings virtually. For example, I've registered for the European Society of Cardiology meeting, virtually, and we're starting on the 30th of August, and I'm joining them.
Right.
And I even found that even being on virtual is even better for me than going, physically, because I can move from room to room on my laptop as I'm doing right now, and I can converse. I can send them my questions, and they attend to me right in the large room. So, and I can easily move from one room to the other to join meetings. So really, it's just a mindset. People need to find out what really are we supposed to do? What can we do to our own nation? What really, we hear the figures all over the world. How can I move this thing? The WHO has said that by the year 2050, 435 million Africans are going to have, develop hypertension, and quite a number are going to die, from that. What will you do? You have to contribute your own quota. Quota. It's never easy anywhere in the world, but people just stay and make sure they help the society, because that's the service industry where we have made ourselves.
Well,
I know we need
quite a passionate case you have made here, but obviously there are other angles to this. And again, I must say that yes, commendation has to be given to those who are choosing to stay. But those who are choosing to go too, they seem to have their reasons. So the essence of this conversation is maybe find that balance. And we've brought you in. I mean, you've worked in the private sector. Maybe we can then borrow some of the recipe that the private sector has used and maybe replicate it in the public sector as well. So, but we'll go to break now. When we return, we'll still have Mr. Anthony. We'll still have the president of the NARD to chime in on this one. This is for everyone, literally. If you're watching, would like to hear from you. Let us know what you think about this current situation we're in right now. So we'll go to break now. When we return, we'll continue the conversation around the health sector. They say health is wealth. So, hey, let's talk about it. Stay with us. Nigeria is facing a public health emergency in the shape of cholera. Over 100 people have died as a result of cholera. And yet again, we have to talk about the health sector. How prepared is it first to handle this and future public health emergencies? This is a constant issue we have to face. So how about we just get into the dirty work and perhaps find a way to resolve this. So we have a full panel of healthcare professionals here with us on the program. We'll be speaking with Dr. Folashade Ali, consultant cardiologist, the CMD of Lagos Cardiovascular Center, Abdullahi Dele, President, NARD, that's the Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors, Comrade Toba Odumosu, Secretary of Nurses and Midwives Association, Lagos Chapter, and Augustine Anthony, Medical Laboratory Scientist, National VP, Young Medical Laboratory Scientists Forum. Gentlemen and lady, quite an interesting conversation. So let me come to you now, Mr. Antonia. I know when that conversation around the push, pull, and the keep factor, which I may have just invented, was happening, I saw you were really interested in getting in. And I'd like to know what it is for you. Are you one of those who are maybe quarter to Japa, or you're choosing to stay to serve in spite of the current working conditions? How are you able to manage this dilemma? That's my question to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. I think it's more spot on and a personal question, which is good. So, talking about the kick and push factors, I began by saying the healthcare sector is not lucrative, even though pay is fine compared to routine Nigerian workflow. It's a thing of passion. Now, there are those who want to stay on a personal level. Even though I should leave this country, I still want to come back. The impact on the healthcare sector. And if I should leave, why am I leaving? We have to be clear about our purpose. So this issue of traveling, some persons go from one country to the other. It's very easy to go to the Middle East. There are a lot of sponsorships. The UK initially used to be very easy, but now it's tending to be more tedious. The same thing with Ireland. I have a lot of friends who have left, quite a whole lot of them. They move from UK, they go to US, they move from UK, they go to Canada. Some of them have gained citizenship and decided to stay. One posted the other day that this is his final destination. So for me as a person, I believe in the future of the country. And just as Dr. Folashade said, right, I think I got the name correctly, if everybody should leave, what is in for us here? I think there should be a mindset shift. We should start thinking about what we can do for the country. A lot of time when young Nigerians leave, they say that I don't want to do anything with that country again. No. This is your fatherland. You're still involved, or your motherland, whatever version of it you think about. You're still involved. And we have to think about what can we do for Nigeria. And if you must leave, moreover, you cannot stop people from leaving. And the truth is that Nigerians do not have the highest rate of migration of skilled workers. I think India tops that list. Bangladesh, China, they're out there. But they are not having this problem because while good hands are leaving, there are also enough good hands who are staying back to train. And a lot of them who leave,
they are coming back to replicate what they're saying there.
A lot of them who leave are able to contribute back to the home country. You heard when the doctor was talking about attending international conferences, they are able to send them spaces and opportunities to their colleagues here to be able to improve themselves so that they can be able to replicate the same thing back home. So it's not just about what can we do to stop people leaving. You cannot stop it. That is just the sad reality. But the question, the discussion should now be when people leave, how can they best contribute back to the fatherland? And those who are going out, like in the olden days when you had people who, a lot of the professors today schooled abroad, but they all came back. But what was the policy that was adopted that made them to go? God's skills came back to impact. If they didn't impact on this young generation now that we are, how are we not able to gain the skills that we're able to use to migrate out? Because for you to travel, you have to be employable first of all. So you could also give credit to the Nigerian system that the system is very resilient. It makes you resilient such that you can handle any pressure. And people like Nigerians because we're able to work under pressure. So you should also give credit to those who came back and impacted. So if you decide to travel and not to come back, how best are you going to give back to the system? I think that is something we are going to be looking at, not about just stopping people from traveling, because
that's what you're calling to a mindset shift. I'm wondering what stage your immigration papers are right now, whether they're at the advanced stage or they're at the middle stage. But it's an important conversation all the same, and you're calling for patriotism is welcome, and we hope that others are thinking in that same vein. But speaking of what government is doing to reduce the pressure across board in all health institutions, let's hear from the Minister of Health, and then we'll be right back.
This has been laid out, both in terms of the primary healthcare system, our hospitals is integrated within that, dealing with human resources, the finances, and the communities around that effort, with quality moving through the whole effort. To unlock the healthcare value chain, which is an important element, the whole ecosystem that is bringing our private sector actors to unleash the potential that exists in our economy through multiple work streams. And His Excellency President announced the initiative to unlock the healthcare value chain as a presidential initiative recognizing this imperative. And finally, the health security agenda learning from the COVID-19 experience, as Mr. Tunji also articulated, so that we are prepared not only for outbreaks, epidemics, pandemics that may come, but also displacements and challenges in the humanitarian setting, or with climate change and health, and the displacements that could occur with flooding and other crises. We will piggyback these efforts, starting from the point of view that we have a National Health Act that has created the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund, and to look at it carefully, and in this council we'll discuss it. How can it be more effective, more efficient, as a vehicle to drive some of the strategic shifts to improve the primary healthcare system on our path to achieving our wider goals.
And we've heard that time and again. And what stage the deployment of fund for the revamping of primary healthcare is currently is what we do not know. But, perhaps our guests, our complete panelists will, respond to that one after the other. But I'm coming to you now, Dr. Dele in our Abuja studio. Dr. Ali had begun to talk about the impact of this pressure on, specialists, the presence of specialists in medical institutions, which is where I want us to explore now. In Nigeria, for instance, a mainstream investigation by a mainstream media revealed that there were about 100 oncologists for the treatment of cancer care in the country. And I wonder how that is also impacting other areas of specialization in the medical field, be it hepatology, pulmonology, dermatology, or epidemiology. Just how many of these specialists do we still have left? And what's the impact on patient care and perhaps mortality rates in these fields if they're just as little as 100 as we have in the oncology field as well?
Thank you very, very much. I don't know if I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
I'm getting it a little skipped here. To quickly answer your question, one, yes, we have to identify that though we have a lot of these people trained, only few of them are currently available. And that is what is affecting our specialist care. I can use my own hospital as an example. You barely have up to 5 or 6 of them as pulmonologists within the whole system. It's not like as if we didn't have those that were there before, but a lot of them have left for greener pastures. And I don't like to use the term greener pastures because what I'm saying is that the grass is not green over here. I wish to believe that the grass is still green over here. I know one of the pointers that was raised earlier that Mr. Augusti was answering was, okay, what are the key factors? What is it that's keeping us here? For most of us, it's still passion, patriotism, although we need to start balancing that with reality. And you need to actually understand the argument of those that have left, why they've left, and what it is they are saying. For healthcare workers that have reached the pinnacle of their career, it's easier for them to make the rational decision of staying. But for a young healthcare worker moving up, it's not so easy making that thing because you have to juxtapose it with the current reality and what the future might look like for you, your family, and all the other people that have to depend on you. Now, for the effects that the ministry has had based on the specialist training, I want to first start by pointing it out that the problem we currently see today is a chronic issue. Like I pointed out earlier, my own association already envisaged this future like 5-6 years ago. If you look at most of our documentations, most of our communiques, we've actually been screaming about the exodus of doctors for over 5 years. If we could all remember, at one point in time, we even said, maybe to keep the system running, a policy of 1-for-1 replacement in the healthcare sector. We've demanded for the call for state of emergency in the healthcare sector because we saw the reality that the Nigerians are just coming to terms with right now. A case whereby you are actually saying the fact that it's not just about the ones that have left, but what the effect is on the ones that are left on behind. The workload, the burnout, the psychological stress, the mental stress, and how many of them will this tilt? The push factors we need to look at is not just the poor remuneration alone. We need to look at the toxic work environment within each of these facilities and how it affects the psyche of the people and how it helps them make that decision to leave. It's easier for you when the stress is not much to say, okay, fine, maybe I can just push through. But when you are not well remunerated for an activity and you tend to always come to work sad, leave work sad, then you make a decision one day, regardless of how much they are paying you, that you want to leave. Like it has always been postulated in most of our engagements with the government, we have pointed it out that even when there is a lot of funds committed into the specialist care of training, what are we doing to ensure we keep those that we have trained in place? So yes, you might train the oncologist, you might train the nephrologist, the pulmonologist, but then you don't have a functional dialysis center. You cannot, you don't have a cath lab that they can function in as a cardiologist. You have very limited number of even the oncology medications for them to use. No oncologist wants to sit down with a cancer patient just to watch the cancer patient die. What they want is a situation whereby their impact is felt. They are touching the patient and then the patient is getting better and there's a form of appreciation. They are seeing the effect of their work. But when you have a case whereby you see a cancer patient and even the basic investigation for this cancer patient cannot be done, for you to get the basic medications for this cancer patient becomes extremely difficult. And the oncologist will look for a sphere whereby he can get all of this easily, get a good work done and do a lot of things. Yes, the patriot in me will always call on every healthcare worker to please let us look inwards and face the reality that Nigeria is our own and we'll have to come back at one point in time, even if we leave. And for all those of us that have decided not to leave, then we have to give it all to ensure that this healthcare sector works. But we need to face our own reality also, which is the government needs to do more to support. It's not about training. Like a point in time, I could remember that one of the few things that the government put up was the fact that they increased the number of, increased the capacity of each training school to produce healthcare workers. Yes, it's a good move. But are we producing healthcare workers for the Nigerian society, or we're producing healthcare workers to be exported to other places? The healthcare sphere around the world is lacking everywhere. You have, even within Africa, people from Gambia, Uganda. If you look at the West African college training, you will see that they have limited number of consultants in almost other West African countries. Nigeria is the one that is most populated. These people are opening their doors and they are calling on all our specialists that we've trained to come and work with better remuneration, a better form of welfare package for them. So the question you want to ask is, like Kayode said, what are the key factors? Nigeria needs to start looking inwards into key factors. Like one person once pointed out, there's relocation allowance. Now, I'm telling you, I'm going to pay you to come. I'm going to pay you better than where you are currently, and I'm going to give you other welfare packages. Before you think about career progression in that place, you are already there. And then when you are there, you started work, and it's okay, fine, now can I progress in my career? But those are the things. So what is it that the Nigerian society is giving to the healthcare worker as a way of supporting? I also have to laud the ministry right now. I noticed that there are bills for the agencies for infrastructure development, and there is this move by the Ministry of Health currently to help improve the facilities of each institution across the country, right from the federal government coffers. It's a good one, but it's still a long-term thing. We need to find a way of keeping our healthcare workers within our facilities, and then we support them as much as possible. Even if we better remunerate them, how do we take care of their working hours? How do we create laws to protect them, knowing fully well that they are working in a disadvantaged region? These are the things that we need to put into place. What about housing for the healthcare workers? What about car loans for the healthcare workers? So many other things that we can do to keep these healthcare workers within our facilities. So yes, there is a lot being done in the part of specialist training, but what is being done in the part of keeping the specialists within our health facilities? That is what we need to look into.
All right. So talking about what we need to do, taking it from Dr. Dele, thank you very much for taking us into the future, because we have talked a lot about the challenges, what is going on currently, but what should we now be doing? Let me go to Dr. Folashade Ali. Mr. Anthony had talked earlier about, in the past, people who go abroad to study actually give back to the home country. We've talked about India and some other countries. Why they're doing better is because when they go, they end up impacting on their home country. So I would like to ask, is there like an association of, permit me to use maybe a Japa association, or a platform that helps them come together so that when they go there and they have learned a lot, they can also impact on their home country in Nigeria, maybe through training, through whatever means it is that is possible, to use a platform that brings that will bring all of these people together who have gone abroad and witnessed that side of life, to impact these doctors and professionals in the health sector in Nigeria.
Okay, thank you very much for that input. Like right now, especially we that are in the private health sector, we're trying to ensure that there is collaboration. The word now is collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. You know, like we reach out to the specialists abroad, my colleagues, both mates, senior, junior. We reach out to them. We're doing this thing right now, and we want you could come and join us. And you find out really they are willing to come back home and give their own quota into the society, because I can assure you, they know that the gap is really huge back home, and they are ready to come home. So we've set up some platforms whereby they come in and join in whatever we want them in their field of expertise. So we bring them in, and then they come around. And they can come in different groups. You can call them privately. They themselves form a team of mission. They call it mission, and they come in as a group. If, for example, the cardiac surgeons, they come in with their perfusionists, with their everyone involved, and then they come around in that respect. So the word now is collaboration, and I think that should be the case even in government setting. Because healthcare sector, not one single person can do it. The government cannot do all. We all need to come together. But the platform by which I want the government to help us here is, to bring to make it easier for people that's the experts, colleagues, to come back in terms of, I don't know how they can do it in terms of possibly. They can entice them with some good remunerations, so they come home, and usually when they come, they train others that are here as well in their field of expertise. They impart their knowledge. It's like importing. They import their knowledge, and they train people on ground. So we've had people who have been trained under different aims of them. Right. And then so these are what we have been doing in the private healthcare sectors. We've been collaborating seriously with colleagues abroad to come and offer their expertise, because we tell them, look, what you are doing over there, we need you more here. We need you more here, and they are always glad to come back. So the government should possibly also look at how we can bring back our own people to come and give their quota in their different fields of expertise: oncologists, cardiologists, right, interventionists, well, Dr. Ali, and all on. Yes.
Maybe another day we'll talk about ease of doing business as well for a lot of them in terms of funding, because a lot of them have great ideas. They are well skilled. I think there was this doctor that trended recently. I did a video that is coming back to Nigeria to render his service. A lot of them who want to do that, but then they think of the bottlenecks. They think, how will the civil service respond if I want to register this, that, and they just think, you know what, forget it. I'm going to stay here and keep. So I think it's something government needs to think about. Have using special purpose vehicles is a bit tricky these days, but have a special, arrangement where they can just apply easily and start their business and, of course, get all the paperwork done. Let me quickly come to you, Mr. Odumosu, as we begin to wind down. Quite an important point she has raised. I think at the heart of this is money. As simple as that. Money for remuneration, welfare, money for equipment, and of course management. Because it's one thing to have the funds, it's another thing to manage the funds. But I want us to wind down on this, cholera matter. Again, if we're able to paint a vivid picture, maybe those who are meant to do something will see that, okay, we're meant to do something. So we're faced with the challenge of cholera, right? And we need to, we saw what we did with COVID, right? How we stood up to it. So first, in terms of responding to cholera, this cholera outbreak, are we well equipped? Perhaps, again, that can paint a picture. What have you seen? So, again, we can say this is where we're at and this is what we need to do to get there.
Yeah, thank you. So, I think that, the thing to even say is that, especially for a low-income country like ours, the first thing is prevention. We shouldn't even be having those kind of outbreaks in the first place, because having them means that there are certain systemic issues. It also comes from state, for example, water.
Yeah.
The fact that we do not have running water, Lagos, the water corporation does not supply water. People don't have, those are things that lead to that, and those are systemic issues, and which then, of course, put pressure on, because the recommendation for especially countries who are resource constrained like us is always to, dwell more on the prevention. You can't really afford to be having these kind of cases because they're quite they'll put a lot of pressure on your system. So, but we're just doing whatever we can do within the resources and the hands we have. So, and when we want to place many of the responsibility for all these issues at the foot of the government, you understand? Because we have to also look at it from the structure, and before we look at the macro issues of the migration and Japa that we're having. Take, for example, budgetary allocation. This year, at the federal level, we are seeing something maybe a little over 5%. Much farther away from the 15% Abuja declaration we always talk about. Which means that if you are doing that at 5%, you are never going to get the kind of healthcare system you're looking for. It's not it's just simple math. It's just not going to happen. The fact that you have even been, the Abuja declaration was 2001, and consistently we've never met that target, which means that you have been in consistent deficit all the years. So that even if you want to play catch-up, you must be thinking of how can we even put it at maybe 20%. And which comes to the idea of the fact that almost all associations have been talking about the declaration of a state of emergency, because you're just looking at a system that might just collapse under the right conditions. If you have a pandemic that stretches the system too far, you just see a system that would crumble and not be able to actually adequately respond. And that is one key area that would, if we're going to see anything different, the budget already says what the spending priority of the government is. If they're not willing to prioritize those things by giving correct, appropriate budgetary allocation to health, there's just nothing. You continue to see Japa, you continue to see all these systems, and the system will continue to decay. And maybe I should just say that also, because those are like low-hanging things that I think
30 seconds. Yeah,
that can be taken up. Because you mentioned about finance, that without bringing a lot of finance into the system, nothing will change. The NHI, AHAT, was supposed to do something for us, but 2 years down the line, we've not seen much. And when you also look at the system, one important thing we must see is that the regulatory space is very lax. I can say as much as 40 to 50% of people within the health sector have no business there. You have all sorts of people who are not, because if you plug all those holes, magically you just see that there is money to actually finance many of the things we are talking about. It's not that Nigeria or the health system cannot throw up enough welfare package, but there are also serious regulatory issues that make it very difficult.
So much for the government to reflect on, and this has been a very, very rewarding and constructive interview. We've heard about possibility of misdiagnosis, margin of error, the pressure that you're going through, the key factors, and for those who have chosen to stay, the zeal. And, I just want to say that we appreciate all of you who have chosen to stay. Mr. Abdullahi Dele, Comrade Odumosu, Mr. Anthony, and Dr. Ali. Thank you so much for choosing to stay and for the work that you are doing, to keep the health sector going. We appreciate you. So we've had Dr. Folashade Ali, private medical practitioner, consultant cardiologist, Lagos Executive Cardiovascular Center, who joined us via Zoom. We've also had Dr. Abdullahi Dele, who is the president, Nigeria Association of Resident Doctors, and senior registrar, Department of Family Medicine, University of Ilorin Teaching Hospital. Thank you very much for your time, sir. We've also had Mr. Toba Odumosu, who's the Secretary, National Association of Nigerian Nurses and Midwives, Lagos chapter. Thank you very much, sir, for your time. We've also had Mr. Augustine Anthony, who is a medical laboratory scientist and the National Vice President, South-South Young Medical Laboratory Scientists Forum, Nigeria. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
So we'll switch gears now from the health sector to the education sector to look at yet another thorny issue and how to address it. So stay with us. We'll be right back.